talk about BBC again. Remember yesterday we talked about Christchurch, Oxford University appearing on University Challenge. One contestant wearing the colours of the Palestine flag and with a well-known anti-Semitic trope, the blue octopus there in front of the team. The BBC, we said, well, that looks to us like anti-Semitism. The BBC said it isn't.
Yeah, and even better, the BBC said the mascot was one of the team's favourite
Rubbish.
animals. What is this, primary school university
What do you think
challenge?
we were born yesterday? I mean, come on.
It's my favourite animal, so I need it in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the BBC today announced that black isn't white, that night isn't day. You know, I mean, you can't do this. That is an anti-Semitic trope, and the BBC should own up to it. It's absolutely ridiculous.
No, I agree, and it's just yet another in the long line of the BBC showing their true colours, and those colours are pretty grim to look at, aren't they?
Now, talking... so I don't like the BBC much. Well, I wouldn't mind the BBC as long as we didn't have to pay for it.
Wouldn't mind the BBC if it
If they didn't force us to pay for it, they'd do what the hell they like. But since they do, we reserve the right to criticise them at every turn. But here's an organisation I genuinely don't like. That's the useless United Nations. Guess what? One of their officials has come up and criticised Britain for over-sentencing Just Stop Oil protesters, giving them too harsh a sentence. No, I would beg to differ. We're not giving them sentences that are nearly harsh enough. Stick them away for 10 years.
Do you know, what I hate the most about the UN is it thinks it's the Vatican. It's established itself as the global church, the moral authority in the absence of religion. All these characters at the UN can tell us exactly what's right or wrong, and other countries are supposed to just go along with it and hand over any of their decision-making to this sort of ridiculous entity, largely based in New York. But what is so mad about this, considering, you know, these people are wild eco-protesters, have you ever seen the fleet of UN vehicles with their diplomatic immunity? All of those UN-powered cars in lots of bases around the world, gazillions of
Africa.
All of their officials flying around on business-class flights to go and, I don't know, sit in posh hotels in Nairobi and chew the cud over
big Range Rovers with UN written on them all over Africa.
All over.
The money that organised. Anyway, this is the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights. God, what a bore he sounds, doesn't he? His name is Ian Fry, and he's written to British ministers to say, stop punishing Just Stop Oil protesters so harshly. Hey, Ian, do one. What we're going to do is, when I assume control, we're going to send them to jail for 10 years minimum. How about that?
All these supranational organisations just need to go away now, don't they? They need to wind their neck in. I used to be all for having a little bit of global organisation, but the thing is, once they exist, they just have to keep expanding, find more reasons to exist until they essentially just want to become a global government.
Well, they're supposed to be, you know, where nations get together to talk about global problems. Antonio Guterres, the General Secretary of the United Nations, has appointed himself sort of climate change emergency campaigner-in-chief and has coined the phrase. He goes, we're going to stop talking about global warming and start talking about global boiling. There is nothing is boiling because of climate change, you arrant idiot.
I mean, what's so sick about this organisation is they like inviting that weird little child from Sweden along.
Oh, well, let's not... Don't mention her name.
Don't even start.
Thunberg. Alison Hammond. Alison Hammond. Now, Cliff Richard went on to This Morning. You know that programme that people used to watch but don't anymore.
I prefer, you know, tuning into us.
Because it's rubbish. After Sarah Ferguson appeared on the show, so did Cliff Richard, veteran pop star. And Alison Hammond took umbrage over him talking about Elvis being too fat. Let's have a look.
He's put on a lot of weight. And I thought, if I'm having a photograph taken with him and it's going to be hanging on my refrigerator, he's got to look good. And I put it off, and, of course, then he died.
Should never put it off just because they're a little bit heavier.
No. If anybody has got... If you're a fan of somebody's, you should, if you get the chance to meet them, meet them, even if they've put on weight.
Is that why you don't want me at your house?
He's a weird little skelly bob, isn't he, that one, with a funny old hairstyle. But you know what? This whole idea of, it's got to be a beautiful photo if I'm going to hang it on my fridge. I mean, what? One of my best mates always gets the Cliff Richard annual calendar. I have seen inside that horror story, and believe me, I wouldn't want it hanging on my fridge.
Well, I guess so. I mean, I've seen he's produced a calendar every year for God knows how long. You know, he's a very nice guy, Cliff Richard, but I think he was slightly out of time there, talking about not posing with the king because he was too fat at the time. Alison Hammond taking exception to that. I don't know why she took exception to it, but also we have Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, whose life has been peppered with extraordinary wrong decisions. And her latest wrong decision was to appear as a host on This Morning. It was a catastrophe.
Was it
absolute catastrophe?
toe-suckingly bad?
It was toe-suckingly excruciating.
Oh,
it was so bad. So, Sarah, of the many things that you show no talent for, television presenting can be added to the list.